Good afternoon, good day everyone. I am Dr. Garampial, and today I will be presenting our instructional design under the course Principles in Teaching and Learning in Medicine. So this presentation focuses on applying evidence-based pedagogical approaches to our topic that we have chosen, medically important amoeba in medical parasitology. So this presentation centers on instructional design. So how we structure learning to enhance our clarity, we deepen students' understanding, and create a more meaningful experience to our students. So I will be walking through the learning outcomes, the content, the methods and activities, as well as the formative and summative assessments aligned with each objective. So our focal course is medical parasitology with a specific emphasis on medically important amoeba, intended for second-year students. The design aligns with the cognitive, psychomotor, and affective demands of this level, ensuring scaffolded development from foundational knowledge to clinical reasoning. Our first learning outcome emphasizes foundational understanding. So the students must be able to describe the morphology, life cycle, transmission routes, and pathogenicity of Entamoeba histolytica, Aedes par, and other non-pathogenic species. To achieve this, content includes trophozoite and cyst morphology, structural hallmarks such as chromatoid bars and karyosomes, and differentiation among species. We employ an interactive lecture and visual life cycle mapping paired with labeling and comparative morphology activities. For Learning Outcome 1, the assessments are designed to measure foundational understanding of morphology, so the life cycle and pathogenicity of medically important amoeba. We begin with formative assessments such as a short 5-item concept check quiz and a diagram labeling activity. So these allow me to or us to immediately identify the gaps in understanding. For instance, I provide the class with a blank life cycle diagram of E. histolytica, and they label structures such as the cyst, trophozoite, and excitation stage. So this activity helps validate whether they understand the progression from ingestion to tissue invasion. So for the summative assessment, I used one best response MCQs and a short answer test focusing on distinguishing pathogenic from non-pathogenic amoeba. So this ensures that students not only memorize structures but can also articulate why E. histolytica is pathogenic while species like E. coli or Indolimax nina are not. So the second outcome transitions from recall to early clinical reasoning. So the students must differentiate classic intestinal amoebiasis from extraintestinal diseases, so particularly amoebic liver abscess. So key clinical features would include dysentery, flash-shaped ulcers, right upper quadrant pain, and the characteristic anchovy paste abscess. So this is delivered through case-based learning and small group clinical reasoning. So the students analyze vignettes comparing amoebiasis with bacterial colitis and work through diagnostic thinking. So for Learning Outcome 2, which focuses on differentiating intestinal amoebiasis from extraintestinal diseases such as amoebic liver abscess, the assessments emphasize clinical reasoning. So the formative tool that we are going to use is a case discussion worksheet. So here, the students analyze a scenario, for example, a patient presenting with right upper quadrant pain and fever. So they are going to determine whether this presentation aligns more with amoebic liver abscess or another differential such as pyogenic abscess. We then provide diagnostic reasoning feedback to refine their thought process. So the summative evaluation includes case-based MCQs and a modified essay question where students justify their diagnostic decisions using pathognomonic features like anchovy paste abscess contents or flash-shaped ulcers. So this approach assesses their ability to integrate clinical clues with pathophysiology. So the third outcome, develop psychomotor competence. So the students perform wet mounts, differentiate trophozoites by motility in RBC ingestion, and identify C structures based on nuclei and chromatoid bodies. So the strategy includes demonstration, guided laboratory practice, and digital microscopy. So for learning outcome 3, which involves performing and interpreting a stool microscopy, the assessments test psychomotor skills and diagnostic accuracy. So formatively, a laboratory checklist guides students during actual slide examination. They also validate each other's identifications during peer review. For example, one student may identify a trophozoite ingesting RBCs, and the partner confirms whether the identification is accurate or needs correction. Summatively, an OSPE station is used. So a microscope with a prepared slide, say a cyst with eight nuclei is set up. The students will rotate and must correctly identify the organism and stage within a time station. So I also include image-based MCQs to reinforce recognition of nuclei patterns, motility characteristics, and structural variations among species. So the fourth outcome integrates technology-enhanced diagnostics. So students analyze the appropriate use of microscopy, antigen detection, especially for distinguishing E. histolytica from E. dispar. So PCR confirmation and serologic test for extraintestinal disease. So through problem solving and self-directed learning, they construct diagnostic pathways and troubleshoot stool quality issues. So for learning number 4, outcome 4, which focuses on applying diagnostic algorithms involving microscopy, etc., as mentioned before, we are going to use a formative assessment which consists a diagnostic flowchart that students annotate. So for example, they may be given a discordant scenario. Antigen test positive for E. histolytica but stool microscopy negative. So the students must chart the next steps such as repeating the stool exam or considering PCR and explain the rationale. So the summative assessment includes a modified essay question in a practical test where students must choose the correct diagnostic pathway given a set of clinical and laboratory data. So this ensures they understand when to escalate testing and how to interpret conflicting results. Outcome 5 addresses the public health dimension. So the students examine global health, global and Philippine epidemiology, fecal and oral transmission patterns, and community-level preventive strategies. So using cooperative learning through a jigsaw method, groups identify risk factors and develop prevention maps. So for learning outcome 5, which focuses on epidemiology, formatively, the students will create a group infographic. So for example, one group may develop an infographic on household water sanitation practices, while another focuses on food hygiene. So they present this to the class, highlighting preventive measures relevant to local communities. So rubrics will apply. So summatively, we will administer a short essay on public health control strategies complemented by MCQs covering epidemiology, prevention, and sanitation. So this combination ensures our students not only they are going to recall the facts, but also apply public health principles to real-world settings, specifically Philippine setup. So this component strengthens professional and ethical practice. So learning outcome number 6, students study biosafety levels, proper PPE, safe handling, and confidentiality in reporting results. Through role-playing scenarios such as receiving a specimen with incomplete data, they develop judgment and ethical clarity. So the learning outcome for learning outcome 6, which focuses on professionalism and biosafety practices, the assessments measure ethical behavior and laboratory safety. So formatively, the students write a brief reflective journal after a role-play scenario. For example, they receive a stool with incomplete patient identifiers. They must discuss how they handle the situation while maintaining biosafety and confidentiality. Summatively, a scenario-based written exam test, written exam test, their ability to apply biosafety principles. We can also use an OSPE station to evaluate whether they demonstrate correct PPE use and proper specimen handling. And we believe that these assessments ensures that the students internalize responsible and ethical laboratory conduct. So the final outcome represents the highest cognitive level, which is to integrate clinical manifestation, laboratory findings, imaging, epidemiological clues to manage ambiguous or complex cases, which includes co-infections or mimicries. So team-based learning reinforces readiness and collaboration, while structured group case analysis ensures systematic reasoning. So finally, for learning outcome number 7, which involves interpreting complex clinical cases, no, like suspected amoebiasis, the assessment tests are higher order reasoning or higher order thinking skills. So formatively, team-based learning promotes collaborative analysis, so the students first complete an individual readiness test, then work together on a complex case. For example, a patient with diarrhea, ambiguous imaging findings, and conflicting stool and serology results. So their reasoning is documented through worksheets. So summatively naman, an integrated final case examination requires students to synthesize clinical, laboratory, and epidemiological data to arrive at a justified diagnosis. So constructed response questions further assesses their ability to explain diagnostic thought processes under conditions of uncertainty. So those are our 7 learning outcomes for our topic amoeba, no, for our second year students in parasitology. So this is Dr. Garampiel po with Dr. Toledo for our report. Thank you very much for listening.